Good morning, friends. Let's learn together on this beautiful snowy day. So, we are reading American Miscellany, of course. It's a collection of essays, a very thick collection of essays. It was published in 1865. So, I feel like I have to warn you guys this time, right? I haven't, of course, I haven't read any of these essays. I'm reading them for the first time with you. We're learning together here for the first time. But sometimes the subject of the essays makes me kind of hesitate, makes me want to go ahead and apologize ahead of time. The subject for essay number 149 is infant education. So, just a little reminder, I'm just reading these essays. I have no knowledge of what's coming. It's probably going to be pretty old information, 161-year-old information to be precise. So, it's probably not going to be entirely accurate to our modern understanding. But you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's learn together. Let's see. Our previous essay number 148, was about the habits of Roman ladies, which I thought was pretty interesting. So we're going to continue along the feminine lines here. We're on page 382 of American Miscellany, and we're about to get into essay number 149, Infant Education. To those persons, yet too numerous, who hold secular education to be limited to reading, writing, and counting, the education of infants has appeared a practical absurdity. How can babies be taught to read, to write, or cast accounts? We answer, whatever may be effected in those accomplishments with the older children of infant schools, and much is effected, reading, writing, and counting form no essential parts of infant education. Infinitely higher cares demand that infant trainers study. The germ of mind is in his hands. That mind, which he is presumed to know in its future full development, is before him in its first feeblest manifestations which he can recognize and mold and direct aright to the incalculable good of the individual and society, or leave undirected to all the chaos of incalculable evil. His position is not merely important, it is awful, and he is unfit to occupy it whom it fails so to impress. The function of the highest and latest academical chair, academical? That's what it says. The function of the highest and latest academical chair shrinks into insignificance when compared with the behest of him who, in the person of a Wilderspin, was taunted as the baby professor. Education begins almost with birth. What is called an infant school is really an advanced stage, strange as it may sound to many ears. The infant school is physically impracticable with children in the nurse's arms. They must be able to stand alone and walk, or as a rule to have reached the age of 2 years. There are then 2 precious, valuable years to be accounted for. How have they been bestowed? The future man may have been made or marred in these 2 years according as they have been devoted. The infant cannot read or write, but he can perceive and feel and act. It is born with some mental faculties in full capacity to act. It speedily sees, hears, tastes, smells, touches, and mechanically moves and resists and shrinks when support is withdrawn for an instant. It feels pain. It knows how to act in obedience to the instinct of food. It cries when unsupplied and often manifests violence and passion. It is soon engaged in perceiving and examining material objects, and when gaining a knowledge of their qualities, is occupied more importantly than it will ever be in its years of mature accomplishment. Is there no field for the educator in all this? There is, and one of the most delicate and skillful cultivation. Keeping in view that education has 2 great ends, to train all the faculties to proper action and to instruct the intellectual, let us make the attempt to describe the beau ideal of secular education, commencing as it ought with cradle education soon after birth. It has been said that we can imagine a mountain of pure gold and a sea of wine. Let us then conceive what as yet is almost as unrealizable, a series of educators ready for a fortunate human being from his birth onward to his maturity, who are qualified by principle and practice to conduct every step of his training and instruction aright. To his nurse, and well for him will it be that the functionary is the nurse of nature, the mother, is assigned to the deeply responsible function of commencing the course, and we are entitled to require that the child shall not be subjected to any counteracting influences from the ignorance of others around him. We presume that the mother knows infant nature physically and morally, and that the conditions of the bodily health and right mental development are both perfectly understood and kept steadily in view by her. She is fully instructed in infant treatment, and has fully abjured all the mischievous absurdities which peril infant health, and multiply infant graves. She knows the gradual and successive development of the human faculties, the watches with intense interest, the first buddings of the infant mind. She occupies its waking moments. Skill in this occupation is itself a test of the merits of a nurse. It has two important results. It exercises and thereby improves the senses and observant powers, and it diverts from the incessant importunity of the animal feelings, lessening thereby their intensity and laying the foundation of virtuous habits. A wide difference is observable among nurses in power and disposition to amuse infants, but even the best diverter would gain yet greater purchase if, from the knowledge of nature and mode of action of the senses and observing powers, she offered amusement which would tend to their improvement. Forms, sizes, colors, arrangement, number, relative position, and resistance may all be made at once amusements, lessons, and exercises to the infant, while the several senses, through which their perception gains admittance to their appropriate cerebral organs, may all be passing through a course of improvement by various judicious trials of their vigor. The relations of musical tones are often very early perceived. We have heard a part of a melody hummed, in imitation of its nurse by an infant scarcely a year old. A singing nurse possesses a grand additional qualification for her office. There is no excitement more wholesome to an infant's spirits than a lively song, no diversion from excess of animalism more powerful. Animalism is preeminently present in the infant for the wisest ends. Unqualified selfishness in the matter of food is essential to an infant's existence, and it cannot, in its sphere, more benefit the society which it has become a member than by just such self-seeking. But even the infant may play the glutton and form a habit thus early which will unfavorably characterize the adult. Organization will direct the phrenological mother in this particular, for as the instinct manifests itself a few hours after birth, its cerebral indication is early developed. Next, in order of time, to the alimentive, the combative and destructive instincts show themselves. The plaintive wail of pain gives place in many infants to the sharper cry of temper, and very young infants will rage and strike and kick and roar till they are well nigh black in the face. Phrenological physiologists can tell the effect of this over-exercise on the plastic infant brain. At no later period of life will it make so deep an impression. Then is the habit of irascibility first formed, to become more and more defiant of control, till its strength in afterlife may disturb domestic and public peace, break out in acts of violence and homicide, or terminate in dangerous insanity. The enlightened mother knows all this and watches closely the incipient signs connecting them with the obvious organization. Then will her powers to divert be called for every paroxysm of of temper, which she succeeds in averting, will be so much gained to the moderation of the faculty's activity, of its future strength and defiance of control, till, like the skillful physician who, by mitigating the periodical attacks of disease, lessens at once their frequency and severity, she has succeeded in forming a character of patience and even gentleness, compared with what would have resulted from leaving, as is yet too much the course to do, the combative and destructive impulses to their own wild way, and society to make fruitless laws for restraining them. That's interesting. That's a very long sentence. Let me try that again. Okay, there's the end of the sentence. Look at this. Look. Oh my goodness. This is the era of Dickens. All right, here we go. For every paroxysm of temper which she succeeds in averting will be so much gained to the moderation of the faculty's activity, of its future strength and defiance of control, till, like the skillful physician who, by mitigating the periodical attacks of disease, lessens at once their frequency and severity, she has succeeded in forming a character of patience and even gentleness, compared with what would have resulted from leaving, as is yet too much the course to do, the combative and destructive impulses to their own wild way, and society to make fruitless laws for restraining them. Okay, get it at the source, I guess. In the course of the 2 years of what may be called the nursery period, other faculties, still of the inferior and selfish class, will, in various degrees, but always according to the organization, successively exhibit themselves. The germs of faculties, which in excess are covetousness, cunning, pride, vanity, and obstinacy, will be found to answer to organization, and the well-prepared mother will detect them, when to others they would remain invisible till at a later period they become unmistakable from the domestic annoyance which they occasion. These are the manifestations of faculties placed in the human constitution for wise and good ends, when not in abuse, of which abuse the above series are the names. That is, covetousness, cunning, pride, vanity, and obstinacy. The skillful nurse will guide them aright and present them with their proper objects. She knows that she will find the largest organs certainly the most tending to excessive and unfavorable manifestation, and to these her corrective attention will be chiefly directed. Her powers of diversion must never fail her. As with passion, so with obstinacy, she must divert the infant from its exciting causes, and never contend with it. And so, of all others, she will avoid an unwise or thoughtless purveyance of their objects. Having succeeded, as she will not fail to do, if there be no more than an average endowment of the animal propensities, in producing at least the negative qualities of patience, moderation in food, and absence of cunning, greediness, obstinacy, and infant vanity and self-esteem, should the signs of the last two appear, she will welcome the first gleams of the higher unselfish feeling of benevolence. This will first appear in the passive and negative form of a gentle sweetness, but may be directed into the positive channel as the 2 years move on, of kindness to domestic animals, protection to insects, acts of affection to other children and adults, and of readily parting with cherished objects or shares of them as gifts. It is not likely that, in average cases, such manifestations will go much further, but daily, nay, hourly, exercise thus far will be of inestimable value, and will tell for life upon the general character. By the time of the second anniversary of our élève's birthday arrives, presuming, as we do, that the perceptive powers have received constant exercise, so as to be strengthened, and stored with the knowledge of things and their qualities which present themselves in nursery life, There will be introduced to the infant school a subject admirably prepared for the more advanced course which will begin in that valuable seminary. With just pride and hope, with just pride and hope, the excellent mother will hand her child over to the infant school teacher. She has done a duty of high dignity in the moral world, a duty which, if universal, would change the face of human society, and elevate man to a rank really, and not nominally, only a little lower than angels, and more in conformity than history has ever recorded him with the image in which he was created. But alas, when shall such things be? When shall we see such children? When such mothers? Our élève is now introduced to the little world of the infant school, where he will enjoy advantages denied to the solitude of the nursery. He mingles with numbers, of which element the importance in the formation of his character is obvious. He finds his fellow men in a variety of aspects, with a variety of characters resembling and differing from his own, in his intercourse with whom he will find use for all the faculties he possesses, which imply social existence as man's destiny. Some of these, in their manifestations in his companions, may encroach on his right to his food, others on his little property. Some may touch his self-esteem, others mortify his love of approbation, and in other ways try his forbearance. Such feelings it will be the daily lesson and exercise of the place to control in himself, and forgive in his less worthy playmates, and he will be led to love his little enemies, if so they may be called, and requite them good for evil. Such, he will learn, is the practice of good and great men, and no man is great who is not also good. The training of the faculties begun in the nursery will proceed in the infant school, and on the more extended scale. They will be strengthened by much opposite instruction, example, and exercise. The effect of an innocent rivalry in being and doing good will soon show itself, and no one who is conversant with infant schools is ignorant of what may really be called, in reproach of general society, the high moral standard which guides the intercourse of the little community. It is unnecessary to detail at length the curriculum of a good infant school. Works on the subject are numerous. Those of Wilderspin, the great improver of these seminaries, are well known. The number of Chambers' educational course, entitled Infant Education, is itself a concise guide from which a judicious person might establish and conduct an infant school. The moral branch of the system must ever be held the most important. In order to direct this branch aright, the teacher, like the mother, must intimately know the faculties, both animal and moral, which all act blindly as mere feelings unless guided by an improved intellect. The best infant school teachers we have met with are practical phrenologists. Guys, put that on your resume. Practical phrenology. Such easily ascertain the diversities of organization, but they possess other advantages. Aware of the faculties, they observe and distinguish their marked manifestations, and know well how to meet them with restraint or encouragement as respectively required. The animal or selfish faculties generally require the rein, the moral or social the spur. And delicately and judiciously will an accomplished infant teacher use either. His moral lessons will inculcate how the selfish faculties may be abused, and how invariably by the Creator's moral laws such abuse, besides defeating its own end, is followed by suffering, and may not less certainly how the and not less certainly how the exercise of mercy and truth bring not only delight in their exercise, but reward in their consequences. I feel like I have to try that again. His moral lesson will inculcate how the selfish faculties may be abused, and how invariably, by the Creator's moral laws, such abuse, besides defeating its own end, is followed by suffering. And not less certainly how the exercise of mercy and truth bring not only delight in their exercise, but reward in their consequences. Lessons of temperance tell admirably on the pupils of infant schools. A horror of drunkenness and a knowledge of all its evil consequences are most satisfactorily prevalent in many an infant school, and often has a child with its impressions lisped forth at home, shamed a thoughtless parent into sobriety, and been known to bring him from the ale bench when his wife's endeavors have been brutally repelled. Mercy and kindness to animals, protection to the weak and imbecile, respect for inanimate destructible things, delicate attention to avoid annoying others by troublesome, uncleanly practices, willing obedience to the rules and regulations, punctuality, respectfulness, and affection to superiors, love to equals, and kindness to all, have all been realized in well-conducted infant schools. The intellectual branch of infant education, though secondary, is not neglected in a school when such as it ought to be. There is no cramming and overworking the knowing or reflecting faculties. There is no cramming and overworking the knowing or reflecting faculties. The teacher knows the danger as well as the fruitlessness of such a course. He is well aware of the premature deaths of precocious children, ignorantly and vaingloriously overworked. Oh, well, there you go. He knows that while the moral organs are strengthened by exercise, the intellectual are injured by task work. His lessons addressed to the latter must be incidental, having much of the nature of play, and never too long continued at a time. Much may be insensibly communicated in this way. Lessons on objects and their qualities may be rendered intensely attractive as well as instructive, till a great amount of useful elementary knowledge is required. And experience has shown that many children in the 4 years from 2 to 6, during which they have attended a good infant school, have incidentally, and as so much pleasure, acquired a respectable stock of knowledge and mastered reading, and the elements of arithmetic and geography besides. All this imparted to your élève without a single religious lesson will probably be the exclamation of many. We answer none of it without religious lessons. A teacher of the young, who is himself imbued with the belief that nature's laws are of God's appointment in their most stupendous and minutest revelations, that he governs the physical and not less the moral world by fixed laws, which his intelligent creatures are bound to learn and obey, that the exquisite adaptation of these laws, when obeyed, to the happiness of sentient beings, demonstrate a benevolent, and the sufferings he has attached to disobedience, a just being. It is morally impossible, we say, for such an instructor to give a lesson in either physical or moral truth without discerning the present God in his own mind, and loving him in his own heart, and imparting that knowledge and that love by instruction and sympathy to his pupils. When a teacher's attention was confined to conveying the practice of mere instruments, as reading and writing, he could not lay the foundation of religious feeling in his pupils. Hence arose the supposed necessary practice of imparting scriptural and even doctrinal religious instruction to absolute infants, while the whole while the whole religion of God's natural revelation, unknown as it was to the instructor, was a sealed book to the instructed. Such is not the course to which our supposed élève would be subjected. He would be brought to discover, so to speak, a powerful, wise, and good God in his own existence, and the simple and intelligible arrangements which surround him and give him enjoyment and happiness, till a practical conviction that God is and that he governs the world would be fixed in his young mind, which would through life secure his adoration, while a feeling of gratitude for his goodness would equally secure his love. A deep feeling of piety may be kindled in the infant bosom by an accomplished infant school teacher. In school, where are assembled the children of parents of every variety of Christian doctrine, and some perhaps whose belief is not of the Christian faith, imagine that, our perfect system would rigidly exclude the introduction of the infant mind to what must be the teacher's own special religious belief and opinions. We have presumed an enlightened mother at home, who will have well considered and conscientiously fixed her own faith, and carefully selected her religious pastor. She and he will best determine the time and the way of her beloved child's introduction to the path which leadeth to a kingdom not of this world, to eternal salvation. Who will dare to anticipate the sacred teachings of this inner school, or inculcate faiths and forms which that school may repudiate, nay, it may be abhor? I feel like I need to try that again. Who will dare to anticipate the sacred teachings of this inner school, or inculcate faiths and forms which that school may repudiate, nay, it may be abhor? But joyfully will the favored child be received into that sacred sanctuary, imbued, as he will be, as a foundation for other instruction with a knowledge and love of God as revealed in his natural creation. We should perhaps have described sooner the provisions made in the infant school for physical education. A playground is not only essential for such a seminary, but is the chief department of it. Bordered with the neatest cultivation, stocked with the choicest flowers, adorned with tasteful and even fragile erections of taste, all to practice in refinement and care, it has an ample space for exercises benefiting the age of the pupils. In this place, with its fresh air, more than half their time at school is spent, their sittings in school at one time being short, and here their intercourse is free, and their social feelings the better exercised. No child arrived at 6 years of age who is not unfortunately organized, a subject to be watched in afterlife, can leave an infant school without much of that improvement, that formation of character, which education that at once trains and instructs must necessarily produce. Our supposed experiment, having joined the school with the best maternal preparation, and reaped all its benefits the more easily and perfectly because of that preparation, all the school lessons and the school exercises seconded and enforced at home, the health and strength improved, he it is that will do most credit to the second stage of his education, the infant school, and prove its incalculable advantages. We are prepared to hear that such views are visionary and utopian. We deny it. They are eminently practical. Nay, more, they are practicable, and extreme as they may appear, they will yet be universally realized.